And bringing awareness now also to the emotions that you might be feeling at this moment, just to notice without judgment. What are you bringing with you this Shabbat? Sad, glad, happy, open, closed, all of it. Just aware of, noticing. Breathing together. And in the last minute of our meditation together, bring a particular attunement to the quality of your face. With camera on, without, just inwardly noticing sensations and physical texture around the forehead and around the eyes and the cheeks. Noticing, not forcing the face to open, not forcing it. But just noticing if your presence and your attunement might in and of itself be the permission for your eyes to smile and your face to allow Shabbat to be made manifest. Eino domeh panav shel adam b'Shabbat. Every Shabbat is an opportunity lahakbil, to receive a softer, more inviting This Shabbat's poem is an ocular poem. It's called The Poem That You See. So look around, everyone, into this beautiful room. Take in the poetry of these partsufim, of these faces. Some of them are just images from a long time ago. Some are right here, right now, as we are receiving Shabbat. Maybe our smile can also ignite a smile in others as you smile around the Zoom room. And find the words of Kabbalat Shabbat. These lechadodi, each one of these phrases, lechadodi, is the 26 letters which correspond to the divine face. Yud Hey, Vav Hey, and Ayin Hey, and Aleph Hey. Please sing along with us. Ayin da 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 da, ayin da 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 da. Lechadodi likras kala, v'nei Shabbos neka mor v'zachor b'dibur echad, ishmi'an el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemu echad. L'shem u'letiferet ve'letila lechadodi kras kala v'nei Shabbos nekala v'lang. Lechadodi likras kala v'nei Shabbos nekala v'lang. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקורך ברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי, beloveds, all of you, receive Shabbat's face, give a smile to everybody. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקה והלה.
מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קום יצאי מתוך הפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה. הוא יחמול עלייך חמלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך-עמי, על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי. קרבה אל נפשי גאלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי לאורך קומי אורי שיר תדרי. כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
Hey! Hey! Bnei Shabbat, Bnei Shabbat. Hey! Al Yarish Ben Harzi Ben Isnekael Nagila Ayla Laila Khandani Hena Laila Granyana Ona Laila Shabbat Beni Shabbat Kabbalat. Please rise if you're able. Ay la la lecha dodi, kaskala. Ay la la b'nei Shabbos, b'nei Shabbos nekabelam.
אורי ושלום התרס בעלו, גם בשמחה ובצהלו, תוך אמוני העם סגולה, בואי חלה שבת המלכה, היי לך דודי, היי לקרס גלו, היי פן לשבת, פן לשבת, נקה below.
As we turn to face the door, it is customary and traditional that not only do we welcome in the Shekhinah, the Divine Presence that is manifest on Shabbat, Malchut, Malka, but also we welcome into our community those who are in mourning, for whom the celebration of Kabbalat Shabbat would actually not be appropriate given the proximity of death and the proximity of loss to them. And so into this sacred space, into this container, as if we were standing together at the doorway of our sanctuary, we welcome you, Rabbi Jonathan Zemit, who lost his mother. You lost your mother, Lily, this week. And so we receive you now, Rabbi Zemit. We receive your presence. And
Shalom. Thank you. It's good to be sharing Shabbat with you.
so good to welcome you into our space. It's so good to bring you in to the embrace of this beloved community. And the power of Shabbat, the power of community, the power of togetherness, the power of holding one another in heights and also in depths, in places where there is loss and also healing. Invite at this moment you to be joined also by all of the names of those who are in need of healing this Shabbat in body, heart, mind, and spirit. And so as we invite the names of all of those in our community who are being lifted up and sung to and connected with, we invite you as well into that space, into that circle of healing and care and love. And all of those who are bringing loved ones in through the chat box or in any other way, we bring healing at this moment to our community.
Zaya zoi gotum shiri refuah. Gotinyo shiki refuah. Zaya zoi gotum shiri refuah. Gotinyo shiki refuah. Zaya zoi gotum shiri refuah. Hallel Refanala Anna Elna Refanala Kotinyu Shikir Fuel Zaya Zoiget und Shir Refuel Ana Elna Refanala Ana Elna Refanala.
May there be a healing in body, heart, mind, and spirit for all of those whom we maimed and those whom we brought to heart and mind. May our hands and our hearts lift them. May Shabbat bring healing and presence, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, beloved Romemu community. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Chazan Shechter. Shabbat Shalom, Ben Pearlstein. Shabbat Shalom to you, Jeff Conner, Executive Director, with your tie. I love the tie. We were talking today about untying our ties and our knots, but I love that you have one there. That's a beautiful thing. We're about to share some really important resources with the community, Jeff. So everyone, we're going to share our screen, and in a moment, if you're here for the first time, we're going to come back to that. But for this moment, a couple of really important resources for all of you to be made aware of for the week ahead. We have so much in the land of Pesach. We know this coming Shabbat, this Shabbat, tomorrow morning, we're blessing the new month of Nisan. And of course, with Nisan comes preparation for Passover, almost here. So my Hasidic master's class, which I've been teaching since the beginning of the pandemic, will be visited by our very own Chazan Basia Shechter on March 18th. It'll be a special Hasidic master's class that is open to all, that will feature music and meditation and messages from the Hasidic tradition for Pesach. You can see on the screen in front of you a number of other really wonderful classes, the Open Beit Midrash, all of the resources. Check it out on our website at romemu.org/announcements, so you can make yourself aware of all the different Passover prep. I'll be doing a Seder telling with Drisha. It's going to be wonderful. I think the next slide, Evie. Wonderful. Thank you. Our remarkable JSI rabbinic intern Maya Zinkow is starting this week teaching a class on Jewish prayer, an introduction to Jewish prayer, the language of the soul. It'll be really focused on chanting and the experience of Jewish prayer through the practice of chanting as well. So avail yourselves of that as well.
So Yad B'Yad brings you yet another Shabbat home hosting, and this one bigger and better than ever, 23 different home hosts. There are such incredible topics such as the joy of spring poetry, and don't get me wrong, you know the TV show Schitt's Creek. Up Schitt's Creek is one of the themes, and we specifically are doing a theme on Israel. Come if you love Israel, you can come to and want to talk about Israel, not politically, then you can come to a theme that we're hosting. So join us. And the Romemu Yeshiva is the spring semester of both Romemu Yeshiva and of our adult learning. We have two different centers at Romemu for adult learning. They are both in full swing now. The first week just happened. If you've never sampled a class in the yeshiva, everybody is welcome. If you're a spiritual seeker, join the yeshiva classes if you can. I personally joined Rabbi David's new class called One God Clapping, and it really was incredible. If you ever wondered, like I did, if when you finish like another bottle of wine on Passover, if that's what the Buddha meant by emptiness, he talks about stuff like this. So join this incredible class, right, Rabbi Ingber?
Yeah, I mean, that, and also the riddle, of course, is, did you hear the sound of one God clapping? I think you did. A. B, what do you mean you were there? There's no one there. The Buddhist Judaism class. Anyway, keep going.
So, and also we're announcing we're just opening registration for every summer for the past 3 years. We've had an intensive, a 4 or 6, depends on the year, but this year it's going to be a 4-week summer intensive. It's going to start mid-May and go to mid-June, and it includes a 1-week, believe it or not, in-person retreat, yay, at Isabel Friedman. You can actually just join that 1 week of retreat. You don't have to join for the whole 4 weeks. Visit the website. Applications are open now. We continue with our amazing community kitchen, which has a clothing drive. Bring clothing to donate to those in need. Come volunteer at the kitchen. And this week specifically on Sunday, we're collecting Haggadot to give to people at Rikers Island who would like to have a Seder and an incredible mitzvah. If you have extra Haggadot, please donate them. Bring them on Sunday to the Romemu Center. And then we, again, will put out our offer. If you are looking for help, it can be confusing, bewildering, how to get a vaccine. Our Chesed committee is there to help. And if you've already done it, then volunteer an hour, just an hour a week can help other people. So give the Chesed committee a call and offer to be one of those volunteers if you have that time. And then, of course, daylight savings time this Sunday. So next week, our services will shift to 6:30, the new time, 6:30 p.m. Kabbalat Shabbat will start.
And in next Shabbat morning, everybody, on March 20th, we'll have the opportunity to be together with Rabbi Jill Hammer and the community of the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute. So Rav Kohenet Jill Hammer, Rav Kohenet Shoshana Jedwab, Chazan Shechter, and Rabbi Dayan Kol Assis. There'll be a whole slew of people who are bringing down this particular lineage, and its presence every year at Romemu is remarkable. Anyone who's ever been at Romemu when this weekend comes around can attest and testify to how beautiful it is and how attuning it is. So, of course, Bizchut Nashim Tzidkaniyot, the Midrash tells us that Passover has everything to do with the divine feminine and the possibility of the lineage of the Kohanot. So please come next Shabbat morning to honor the spring equinox together with the Kohenet community. And lastly, tomorrow morning, everybody, we hope to see you all for a 9 o'clock open book and our services, which should be, again, in honor of Rosh Chodesh Nisan and the blessing of Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So come back tomorrow. And those are the resources and those are the announcements for all of you. Blessings to each of you who are here for the first time. If you're here for the first time, we would love to say hello to you. So why don't you raise your hand? If you could raise your hand. A couple of first timers here. Anybody here for the first time, just raise your hand. That function is in the chat area. We'd love to unmute you and just invite you to just say your name and where you're from. And go ahead. I think it was Michael and Nushan.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Nushana, and I am from France.
And I'm Michael, and we live here in Shushan.
You're in Shushan. You're in where? In Shushan, where?
In Washington County
Washington
in upstate
County.
New York.
Yeah, we're close to you guys.
We're at Shushan. Okay. Love it. I love that
We
you're.
were referred by Daniel Brenner down in Brooklyn, Rabbi Daniel Brenner.
Oh, wonderful. Good friend. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for raising your hand and welcome to our community tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We'd love to invite anybody else who's here for the first time to unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Take a couple of more. And just imagine each of you for the first time, if you were doing this live, there would be about 300, maybe more people saying, welcome. So I know that you can feel that through the Zoom room at this moment. Anyone else want to be so bold as to unmute and raise your hand and say, I would love to be welcomed? Anybody? All right. So in the larger Zoom room, we won't have that, but we'll have a chance now just to split off a little bit into different groups. We're going to open up an opportunity to do a kind of pre-barchu, pre-call to community by calling to one another and saying your name and how your week was and what you're bringing this Shabbat, as it were. It's a beautiful opportunity for us to think into what we miss in community, the Shabbat, and maybe share that with one another. So in a moment, we're going to send you to breakout rooms only for a couple of minutes. Say hello, what you're missing a little bit from community and what you're bringing with you this Shabbat. See you in about 4 minutes, everybody. Dini na 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 na, hey na 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 na, dini na 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 na, dini na 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 na, dini na 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 na, hey na 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 na, dini na 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 na, na 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 na. Please rise if you are able for Baruch Hu.
את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Nini nai 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 nai, hi na na nai 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 nai, dini nai 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 nai, na ya na da da nai nai, dini na nai nai nai, hi na na nai 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 nai, dini nai 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 nai, na ya da 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 nai.
ומבדילה בין יום ובין לילה, יצבה שמיים לחיה וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. היי ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרביב. היי
אהבת עולם. בית ישראל עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת. כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו, ינינינינין לעולמים. ידדנינינינינין Yadadidai, yadadidai, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Yam dadadidai, yadadadi, ay, 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 ay. As we shift over to Shema, gathering all the corners of our consciousness, all of the parts of ourselves in community, like Moses in this week's Parsha, gathers Vayakel, all the Israelites to listen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. והיה
עולם שלא נתנתי מתארצך בי, תואר מקור שאספת דגן אהבתי ושך ויצריך, ונעשתי יסי וסתך לבמדך ואכלת, וצבת ישמרו לכם ונפתה לבבכם, והסרתם ועבדתם אלוהים החילוי שלך ויסתם להם, וחרף אדוני בכם, יצר את השמיים, ולא ימת ויד אמר לא עשיתם נס יבולם, ועבדתם רם יד. Yem Adonai el Moshe lemodaber el bnei Yisrael v'emart alim yasvu lem tzitzin. Magan fevik dehim ledoros amnachnu al tzitzin. V'yisem so zecharka and yiskom mitzvos Adonai v'yisem sam v'lo sasruach v'lo chavereini chamashertem zonim al chareihem v'ma'anet yizgeru v'yisem et kol mitzvos v'yisem kidushim le'elohechem ani Adonai elohechem asher tzitzin.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'amideinu malkeinu l'chaim Pros aleinu sukat shlomecha v'takneinu b'etzam tova Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom Aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'al Yerushalayim.
Amen. And please rise if you are able. V'shomeru bnei Yisrael es ha-Shabbat lasos es ha-Shabbat לדורוסם בריסונם ביני ובין בני ישראל עושי לעולם איש ישס ימים עשו אדוני את השמיים נס הורץ וביום השביעי שובס וינבא
יסקדר ויסקדש שמי רבה ודיברך יוסי וימלך מלכוסי וחייכונו יומכונו חייתך בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ימרו
יש מרבה מבורך Le'alam le'amei maya Yisbarach Yisbarach Vishtabach Vispar Visromam Ve'isnase Vishadar Vishale Vishalal Shmei de Kudisha
Richu.
Le'laminiko Berchasa Veshinasa Tush Bechasa V'nechemasa Damiran Be'olma, and let us say,
Amen.
and everyone, we invite you to take a couple of minutes now of personal prayer, silent reflection, Amidah, standing prayer. You can find the words in the Siddur as it's posted, the page number is posted in the chat area as we prepare to receive the holiness of Shabbat together.
Dai, 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 nu. 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 Dai, 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 nu.
Dayenu. Dayenu, just that word, right, brings us right into Pesach, yeah? Right away we can see ourselves and feel ourselves, for many of us, at the Seder. I could see Jory sitting around at her Seder going, Dayenu, or maybe Tamar, or maybe Robin or Howard. All of you can hear that prominent musical meme that brings us to the liberation feast that is known as the Seder. Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu. This homage to sufficiency, to enough. The word die means enough. It would have been die, enough. And then the litany of gratitudes that are not just platitudes. The gratitudes of it would have been enough. But of course, miraculously, the story of that song and that prayer in the Seder liturgy, which has become canonical for so many of us. The beauty of it is, of course, that it doesn't end after the first verse, because it wouldn't have been enough, right? It would have been enough, but it wasn't enough. And each and every year, I'm sure I'm not alone, somebody at the Seder table will not only sing the song, but raise the question that the song implies. If it was enough, Dayenu, enough. No, it was enough. Or was it enough? That tension, of course, believe it or not, the tension of what is enough and what is excessive reminds me, of course, for me, maybe not for you, of course, my grandfather, Alav Shalom, Alexander Ingber, my father's father, Ali. Ay, Ali. Ali was from Hanover, but his father was from Poland, from Tarnov. And in my grandfather's house, on Fishett Street in Forest Hills, each and every Sunday, Ali Ingber was preparing a feast. Oh, wow, a feast. Polish bread and, let's say, not 3 hot dogs, not 4 hot dogs, 20 hot dogs. Not ever, of course, cooked in an oven, but boiled the way they should be, he said. And each and every time my brother Adam and I and the rest of the family would make a trek to my grandfather Ali's house, we would always leave saying, he cooked for an army. Really? And it wasn't easy just to chalk it up to, Holocaust. They survived, they made it out. There was something about his largesse, his generosity, that didn't come from scarcity. There was something about excess that meant something to him, about more than enough. And I'd like to discuss more than enough in the context of tomorrow morning's Torah reading and offer you a teaching from one of the great Rebbes of our tradition that for me, it reframed how I think about excess. First, the verse. Tomorrow morning in Vayakel Pekude, tomorrow morning's Torah portion will be the end of the book of Exodus. And speaking of excess in Exodus, the last 2 portions of the Torah in that book seem to be superfluous. They are more than enough. They're a repetition of some of the very things that have to do with the tabernacle and the construction of what is known as the Mishkan, but repeated again and again. And suddenly in chapter 38 of the book of, chapter 36 of the book of Exodus, we come upon these remarkable verses. Vayomnu el Moshe lemor. They came to Moses and they said, Marbim ha'am lahavi midei avodah melacha. The people are bringing more than is needed for the tasks in the tabernacle. Vayitzav Moshe vayaviru kol b'machaneh lemor. And so Moses sent an email blast to the entire community and saying, enough. Ish v'isha al yasu od melacha l'trumat kodesh vaykalei ha'am mehavi. Enough's enough, Moshe said. And so the people heard, they stopped bringing. And then this verse 7 in chapter 36. V'hamlacha hita dayam lechol hamlacha lasot. And the work, the funds, all of the necessary resources, hayita, can you hear it? Dayam, enough, dayenu. The Torah says, It was enough. And then it adds this one little word, vehoter, and even more. It was more than enough. It was enough and it was more. Unless you think that commentaries say, you know what, fine, the Torah is just being prosaic. It was more than enough. They had more than they could possibly imagine. The commentators are troubled by this inclusion in the Torah. What is the Torah coming to tell us, and why did it have to construct a story where the people were so excited to bring that they brought more than enough? Now, by the way, just parenthetically, that would never be a problem in any fundraising or any capital campaign that would ever get off the ground at Romemu. I just want you to know, we're just setting no limit on that. Bring more than enough, just parenthetically. But the vehoter, the extra word about extra, the extra word. It was more than enough. It was dayin, it was enough, but it was more. There's a great commentator known as the Or HaChaim after his work, The Light of Life. Chaim ibn Attar was one of the great mystics and masters of the Moroccan tradition. And when he came across this seeming contradiction, was it enough or more than enough? What was it, dai or hoter? Dai, hoter, extra. He reads this inclusion in the Torah as a teaching for all of us. He says, when you bring more than enough, God will make room for whatever you've brought, he says. And the truth of this teaching, he says, is that it was a miracle. It was more than enough, but then that which was extra was made room for. It grew miraculously, so that by the end it wasn't hoter, it wasn't too much. It wasn't leftover, it wasn't too much. It was just enough. The Hasidic master, Lev Yitzchak Berdichev, the great Berdichever Rebbe, quotes the Or HaChaim. He says, that's a beautiful interpretation, but here's mine, and here's where I want to go with you. He says, I have my own explanation of this extra. You know what it means, he said? He means that they brought everything that was needed for the building of the tabernacle. And then there was extra. And it isn't a contradiction, he says. It was enough to build the tabernacle in the desert. But the hoter, the extra, that excess, it was to give future generations the space to continue the work of building the Mishkan. It was he says, as if the Torah tells us with a nod towards transgenerational work. It was true, it was it was enough then in the desert. But they left over excess to give us the ability to participate in the continued building of the Mishkan. Certainly not a simple explanation for the Torah text, but a beautiful reframe. The hoter, the extra, the excess, is left over for us to do in each and every generation, acts as a framing of what it means to finish work, to deal with the generosity, as it were, or to see the unfinished work that is passed on to us, not as a burden, not as something that we begrudgingly take upon ourselves, but actually as an opportunity. It gives us excess ability. What do we do with this excess? The unfinished business that Amanda Gorman spoke about in terms of American history is not unfinished, and therefore we are angry that you didn't finish it then, but there's work left for us to participate in the building of democracy. When thinking about our ancestors and all of the things that they left undone, I know in my life I sometimes have turned to my past and said, how could you give that to me? I want to pass it back because I don't want to have to pass it on. And the reframe that the Berdichever says here is that the excess can be seen, the unfinished can be visited, can be framed as a deployment, as a partnership, as a collaboration. So that in the words of another great Hasidic master, the Me'or Einayim, the great Chernobyl Rebbe, whom we've been studying each and every day, each of us in our unique way, we bring what we have to the building of the Mishkan in our lives. That is our excess ability. What do we do with what's unfinished is either a burden or a blessing. Isn't that remarkable reframing? It's a remarkable way to think about how we think about fathers, mothers, parents, sisters, brothers, people that we've met along the way. And in many ways, it mirrors the deepest teaching of the Torah, which is that God says to us, be my partner. I could have finished it on my own, but I left some over for you to finish. I made just enough for you, but then I invited everyone, like my grandfather Ali. There's got to be enough there for everyone. It's die, of course. I could have finished the world, says the Midrash. God could have just finished the world. But he said, Asher bara Elohim la'asot, in the beginning of the chapter of Genesis, in the beginning of the story of Genesis, God says, you know what? Finishing the job myself is not so much fun. I need your help. You're deployed. What's your excess ability? What are you going to make of this precious incarnation? What will you do with each and every day's work in building a world of love and goodness and compassion? And the building blocks have been left for you, and you have the skills and you have the tools. Go to work. Go to work. This, of course, in the mystical tradition of Judaism, this is the deeper meaning behind Gilgul Nishama, the transmigration of souls, what we call reincarnation. It's impossible to finish all of the work in one lifetime, says many traditions. So you get a chance to come back and keep doing it. Oh, I know, Sisyphus. Is it too much? There's a shadow to this teaching too. I wonder where it lands for you. I wonder what reframing the work that has been given to you, not as burden, but as excess, might do. How might we think about the things that we have had to carry with us throughout our lives? How might we think about the work that we have to do in our society writ large? How might we reshape and reframe the work of being a human being? If we were to imagine that each generation leaves over a seat at the table with plenty of those wonderful Frankfurters prepared and says, no, we were waiting for you to add your work, to add your piece. I'm imagining meeting my great-grandfather, whose name I took, Chaim David, and saying, I wish sometimes that you had finished some of the work that you gave to my grandfather and then my father and my mother. But I also thank you. There's still work for me to do. And I will pick it up each and every time I open my eyes and see my children and step around this beautiful world and say, I'll be God's partner. Tonight at your Shabbat table or wherever you go after tonight's service, we're going to drop these two sources into your chat area and hope that you can figure out a way to download it. And I threw a couple of questions in there that emerged as I studied these sources. I'd be so curious if you would help me finish this sermon. Because I know it was it was enough, but Hoter, I'm leaving some work for all of you. Talk about it, chew on it. And maybe if you have a moment after reflection, write me at david@romemu.org what it is that you came to around your Shabbat table. The work is plenty, and it isn't upon us to finish it, but of course, we must take it up. I invite you to please rise as we take into the heart what the Torah has brought forth tonight. והשב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים.
והשב אותה אל לבבך, כי הוויה היא האלוהים.
והשב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים.
אין עוד מלבדו, Einon Efes Ulato.
Nemar v'chaya Adonai melech al kol haaretz bayom ahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo 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 echad.
And we bring to heart our ancestors. Tonight's Dvar Torah was very much inspired by you, Dan Fleshler, and some of the ruminations today that we had about meeting your father on this evening, which is a yortzeit. And so we invite all of those who are in mourning to please rise, and for all of us to turn our attention to the names of loved ones that will be on the screen in front of you, beginning with those who are in the Shiva, the first 7 days of mourning. We read the names of Lily Zemet and Julia Eisenberg, Eric Press, David DeChico, Michael Yates, Robert Kaku Gunn, Hugh Kelly, and Norton Juster. For Leslie Robert Axelron, Charlotte Figman, Seymour Borstein, Stuart Saville, Hank Wesselman, Lawrence Felingetti, Martin Burzow. In the first year, David Rothstein, Felix Austin, Gabriel Gottlieb, Arthur Adler, Gilda Koppelman-Rieger, Mary Armstrong, Meems, Ruthie Lev, Rebecca Pat Cohen, Gerald Bregman, Daisy Menkes Klein, Marianne Goldstick, Jay Goldstein, Seymour Brodsky, Vera Goldman, Rafael Rios Gallardo, Seth Lasnow, Myrna Feldman, Sarah Malina Siegman, Evelyn Goodman, Arthur Siegel, Jason Andrew Brodsky, Dr. Norman Crane, Solomon Marenberg, Cecilia Romo, Stuart Fredfy, David Wenegrat, David Silverstein, Harriet Bloom, Shirley Siegel, Benjamin Wolf Telushkin. Beth Baldridge, Devorah Stoll, Lee Brox, Jean, Foreman Shore, Ellsworth Levine, Erwin Bardesh, Mr. Elsie, Pops Floyd, Lynn Blacker, Shirley Gatzik, Grace Tanin, Denmark, Rabbi Raphael Goldstein, Magid Yitzhak Buxbaum, Brady Rifkin, Lorette Nierenberg, Barry Kosky, Betty Levin, Nancy Trigger, Rabbi Dr. Henry Dicker, Robert Gerald Cohen, Angela Lamb Margolis, Evelyn Goodman again, and Tav Sparks, Annie Etsy, Marie Sinanyan, Lillian Lashinsky, Kate's dad, Jonina Godwin Pitchman, Lou Casota, Lou Aronowitz, and Lois Sasson. Bear Grushkin, Lucy Brabin, Henrietta Vogel, and Chaim Kabak. Rabbi David Cooper, Reverend Robert Grates, Harav Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Mark Evan Brightman, Helene Ailon, Anne Marie Zangara Zati, Munajat, Charlie Dixon, Ido Shefi, Joyce Cohen, Emma Menashe, Chaim Ben Lazar, Leo Litwak. We remember them, Jessica, remember him, and those in the chat area, Robert Blau and Peter Hosperg, and all of those who are writing their names in Facebook and YouTube. We lift up these names, Kim Hall as well. And if those of you who have the custom to stand with mourners would kindly rise, if you're able, at this moment, as we turn our attention to the Aramaic prayer, the mourner's Kaddish. Yiskadal ve'yiskadash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divrach chirusei ve'amlich machusei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kori v'meru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mivorach. Ve'alam v'yomei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar. V'yitramam v'yitnatzeh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal. Shmei dekut shabrichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'oma v'imiru, amen. Yehi shlom rabba min shemaya v'chayim tovim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imiru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, u'berachamav yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel, and let us say, Amen. Shabbos, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbos, holy friends. Chazan Basia Shechter. Shabbos, Chazan Basia.
Shabbos.
Shabbos, Ben Partzi, Ben Pearlstein.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
A huge Yeshikoch to the davening team tonight, to you, Chazan Shechter, and to you, Ben, and also to our beautiful team behind the scenes, to we'll get to you guys in a second, but just all these people here behind the scenes, our wonderful staff that is always available and working so diligently. Look at these amazing people. And two of them who have been moved through the slides very quickly is Evie and Rebecca Feldman. Evie and Rebecca, we maybe can see you guys for a moment, just to thank you as well. Just to see you guys for a moment. There's Rebecca. And where's Evie? Where's Evie? There's Evie. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you. Into this cup of blessing, all of you here in this room, and just in honor of the feeling of Pesach in the air, I have Manischewitz in here. Did you see that, Chazan Shechter? I have Manischewitz. The first of the four cups, as Jeffrey said, is right now. You know, friends, the Shabbos, we're going to be blessing the new month of Nisan. The chapter 12 of the book of Exodus says, you know, hey, everybody, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, it says, this month is for you, which becomes the imperative in our tradition to find the new moon and to name it. And that word lachem is so weird. This month is for you. This month is the first month. What's lachem? It comes back to the teaching about dai v'hoter, right? Every generation adds its own renewal, its own waxing and waning, its own empty and full. And so into this cup of blessing, all of your powerful Torah that will come from tonight, a blessing. Vayer vayevoker yom hashishi, vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz, v'chol tzivam, vaychal Elohim bayom hashvi'i, melachto asher asa, vayishbot bayom hashvi'i, mikol melachto asher asa, vayevarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i, vayikadesh oso, Kivo Shavas Mikol Melachto, Asher Bara, as God has given us room to participate in making Shabbat. Elohim la'asot savri chavirai.
Chaim.
L'chaim l'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kadsho b'ahava uvratzon v'chilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikrai kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim.
Vanu v'charta, vanu kidashta, im kol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodeshecha v'ahava v'ratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen.
Manischewitz! Manischewitz in the house!
starting to smell Pesach.
Amen, amen. Shabbos, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for open book and 10 o'clock for services. Come on, everybody. Stand up and dance for Shabbat. Jessica, Leo was in the house. Good Shabbos. Shabbos to you, Diane. Shabbos to you, Roberta. Batya. Sandra. Zena, David. Daiken. And this is all right. Shabbos. David, good Shabbos, Karen, good Shabbos, Sharon. Shabbos, Rav Neo. Good Shabbos, Neo. Shabbos, Valerie and Mark. Shabbos, Elaine. Shabbos, Eden. Shabbos, David. Shabbos, Alan. Shabbos. Shabbos, Adina and Neil, brother. Neil, Shabbos, brother. Shabbos, Maddie. Welcome. Good to have you. Shabbos. Shabbos of Shalom in Calgary. Shabbos, Judy Dak. Judith, come on, you have to I need to see your face, Judith. There you go. Okay, Judith, good to see you, sister. Good Shabbos to all of you. Good Shabbos. Shabbos, Brer. Hi, guys. Shabbat shalom.